April 19th, 1995 started like any other day. People were heading to work, kids were being dropped off, and downtown Oklahoma City felt normal. Then, at 9:02 a.m., everything changed. A massive explosion tore through the heart of the city.
A massive car bomb exploded outside of a large federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, shattering that building, killing children, killing federal employees, military men, and civilians.
Turning a federal building into a scene of chaos within seconds. Smoke filled the sky. Streets were covered in debris. And in that moment, America witnessed the deadliest act of domestic terror it had ever seen. What made it even more chilling, the attack didn't come from overseas, it came from within. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into what led to this unthinkable moment. Long before that morning in April, something darker had already taken shape. Timothy McVeigh wasn't always seen as a threat. He was a former US Army soldier who had once lived a structured life. But over time, his mindset shifted. In 1988, he met Terry Nichols during basic training. The two bonded over survivalist ideas and a deep distrust of authority. That distrust only grew stronger after two major events: Ruby Ridge in 1992 and the Waco siege in 1993. Both incidents left a lasting impact on McVeigh, fueling his belief that the federal government had crossed a line. He didn't just disagree with what happened, he internalized it. He began to see federal agents not as protectors, but as enemies. At one point, he even described them as soldiers of an evil empire, justifying his thinking in a way that removed any sense of innocence from those working inside government buildings. His anger wasn't impulsive, it was built slowly, shaped by what he saw, what he believed, and what he chose to accept as truth. And over time, that anger stopped being just an idea and started becoming a plan. Now the focus shifted from belief to action. This wasn't random, it was calculated. Instead of targeting individuals, Timothy McVeigh began looking for something bigger. At one point, he even considered a campaign of individual assassination, with names like Janet Reno and Lon Horiuchi in mind. But he changed direction. He wanted one act that would send a louder message. His criteria were clear. The target had to include major federal agencies like the FBI, ATF, or DEA. The more government presence, the stronger the impact. After considering locations across Missouri, Arizona, Texas, and Arkansas, he made his choice. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building stood out. A 9-story building, housing 14 federal agencies, including the DEA, ATF, and Social Security Administration. To him, it wasn't just a building, it was a symbol. He studied it closely. The glass front, the open space around it, even the parking layout. He believed the design would increase the damage and make the impact more visible. Then came the timing. April 19th, 1995, exactly 2 years after the Waco siege ended. This wasn't just about destruction, it was about sending a message on a date he believed already carried meaning. With the target chosen, the next phase moved quietly, away from attention. This wasn't rushed, it was built step by step. Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols began gathering materials months in advance. In September 1994, Nichols purchased 40 50-pound bags of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, followed by another bag weeks later. If these were common farming materials, but in the wrong hands, they became something far more dangerous. They didn't stop there. Explosives were stolen from a quarry near Marion, Kansas, shock tubes, blasting caps, and large quantities of Tovex. McVeigh also tried to acquire other chemicals like nitromethane, even approaching sellers under false stories. Some refused, others didn't. By October 1994, McVeigh had already drawn a detailed design of what he wanted to build. The plan involved thousands of pounds of mixed materials packed into multiple containers. Altogether, the bomb would weigh around 7,000 pounds. To make sure it would work, a prototype was tested in a remote desert. It was a clear sign this wasn't just an idea anymore, it was being perfected. The materials were stored in rented sheds, hidden in plain sight. Nothing about it looked unusual from the outside, but piece by piece everything was coming together. And soon all those hidden parts would be brought together into something far more devastating. By mid-April 1995, everything moved faster. The preparation phase was over. Now it was about execution. On April 14th, Timothy McVeigh checked into a motel in Junction City, Kansas. The next day, he rented a Ryder truck using a false name, Robert D. Kling. It was a small detail, but it allowed him to move without raising attention. At the same time, a yellow 1977 Mercury Marquis was placed in Oklahoma City as a getaway car. Its license plate was removed, and a note was left behind to avoid suspicion. Every move was planned ahead. Between April 17th and the 18th, McVeigh and Terry Nichols loaded the truck. Inside were 13 barrels filled with a mixture that would later be triggered all at once. Each barrel weighed close to 500 pounds. They used boards to hold everything in place and arranged the load carefully to direct the force forward. A dual fuse system was installed, giving a time delay before detonation. Tubes were painted and secured to blend in, making them harder to notice or interfere with. After everything was set, the two men separated. Nichols returned home. McVeigh kept moving. The truck was no longer just a vehicle, it was now carrying everything needed to change lives forever. And by the morning of April 19th, there was no turning back. The morning of April 19th, 1995 had already begun when Timothy McVeigh entered downtown Oklahoma City at 8:50 a.m. He was driving the Ryder truck, moving closer to his target with every minute. At 8:57 a.m., the truck was seen heading toward the Federal Building. Inside the cab, McVeigh lit the first fuse, a 5-minute delay. Then just minutes later, he lit a second fuse with a shorter timer. Yet he pulled into a drop-off zone directly beneath the building's daycare center. He stepped out, locked the door, and walked away. A few blocks later, he dropped the keys and made his way toward the getaway car. At exactly 9:02 a.m., the truck exploded. The blast carried over 4,800 pounds of mixed materials and struck the north side of the building with overwhelming force. 1/3 of the structure was destroyed almost instantly. A crater, nearly 30 feet wide and 8 feet deep, was carved into the street. The impact spread far beyond the building. 324 nearby structures were damaged or destroyed, and 86 vehicles were either burned or torn apart. The force was so strong it was felt up to 55 miles away and registered at about 3.0 on the Richter scale. In just seconds, everything changed. But the real devastation wasn't just in the buildings, it was in the lives caught inside them. In the moments after the explosion, the scale of loss became clear. Around 650 people had been inside the building when it happened. By the end, 168 lives were lost, making it the deadliest act of domestic terror in US history. More than 680 people were injured, many with severe burns, fractures, and deep wounds. Among the victims were 19 children, most of them in the building's daycare center. The ages of those killed ranged from just 3 months old to 73 years. Families were torn apart in seconds. Some children lost one or even both parents. The damage spread far beyond the building. Several hundred people were left without homes. Offices shut down. Entire streets turned into rescue zones. Inside the rubble, many of the deaths were caused not by the blast itself, but by the collapse of the structure. Rescue efforts began almost immediately. Within the first hour, 50 people were pulled out alive. Emergency teams worked non-stop, transporting over 200 injured people to hospitals in just a few hours. Temporary silences were held so rescuers could listen for survivors trapped under debris. In some cases, extreme measures were taken to reach those still alive. It wasn't just destruction, it was chaos, loss, and a race against time. And while rescuers searched for survivors, another race had already begun to find who was responsible. While the city was still in chaos, something unexpected had already happened. Just 90 minutes after the explosion, Timothy McVeigh had been stopped on Interstate 35 near Perry, Oklahoma. He wasn't pulled over for the bombing. It was something much smaller. He was driving without a license plate. When the officer approached, a concealed weapon was found and McVeigh was arrested on the spot. At that moment, no one knew who he really was. Back in Oklahoma City, pieces of the destroyed truck were being examined. One key detail stood out: the rear axle. It still carried a vehicle identification number. That number led straight to a Ryder rental location in Junction City, Kansas. From there, a description was created. A motel employee remembered a man who had rented a truck and signed his real name. That name matched the man already sitting in jail. The connection was immediate. When authorities checked records, everything began to line up. Items found on McVeigh included a business card with the words TNT at $5 a stick. Need more. Traces linked him further to the materials used. What started as a routine traffic stop quickly became one of the biggest breakthroughs in the case. But identifying him was only the beginning. proving everything would take far more time and effort. Once Timothy McVeigh was identified, the case expanded fast. This was no ordinary investigation. It became one of the largest in US history. More than 28,000 interviews were conducted. Investigators followed over 43,000 leads, collected more than 3 tons of evidence, and reviewed nearly 1 billion pieces of information. Nothing was left unchecked. Terry Nichols was quickly linked to the plan and turned himself in on April 21, 1995. Another man, Michael Fortier, was also identified for knowing about the plot in advance. The network behind the attack was now clear. The trials followed in 1997. McVeigh was found guilty on 11 counts of murder and conspiracy after the jury deliberated for 23 hours. He was later sentenced to death and executed on June 11, 2001. Nichols received life in prison without the possibility of parole. The impact didn't end with the verdicts. New laws were passed, including the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. Security around federal buildings was strengthened across the country with barriers, surveillance, and new design standards. This attack changed how the nation viewed threats from within, and even years later, the memory of that day continues to shape how America protects itself. April 19th, 1995, wasn't just a moment of destruction. It became a permanent scar in American history. A single truck bomb caused an estimated $652 million in damage, destroyed or damaged 324 buildings, and shook a nation that never expected something like this from within. The images, the silence after the blast, and the lives forever changed still echo today. But it leaves questions behind. How can warning signs like this be recognized earlier? And could something like this happen again in today's world? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel to watch more real crime cases this, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.